it is going to take a long time to get this inflation in check, no matter what the Federal Reserve does. Listen, it's a very good thing, I believe, that the Federal Reserve, as they manage from behind, they are going to raise interest rates. That's a good thing. That strengthens the dollar. If the dollar is stronger, inflation keeps in check, and that is good. But there's also organic inflation, things that the circumstances inside the economy are happening that are going to increase prices. One of those circumstances happens to be bottlenecks, happens to be supply chain issues that does not, cannot, will not go away overnight. Remember, the supply chain is not a single link chain. It's called a chain for a reason, and there are a lot of things that have to be linked together. I don't have to tell you, but in any kind of chain, if there's a link missing, then you don't have continuity. You don't have a good, strong chain, right? You got breaks in it. Maybe you have a weakness of a weak link, a link that's halfway cut through that makes it weak. So there are a lot of different factors. So when we look at supply chains, like I said yesterday and like I'm hearing today about still over 100 ships at anchor outside the ports of Southern California, when you look, and that's probably changed. That was back on Tuesday, I believe. It may have already changed a bit, but for the better, I hope. But when we look at those things, it's just one part of the equation. So if you are in the trucking industry, you have a feel for supply chain issues when it comes to the transportation side of things. That is another piece. That's a different piece than the ships being anchored. Do they all tie together? Yes. But what has to happen with the supply chain today is it's got to be built link by link by link. And you can't start in the middle of the chain. You got to start at the beginning. And you got to figure out, if you haven't figured it out, what's the beginning and what is the problem in the very beginning of the link. And when you look at what the problem is at the very beginning of a link, number one would probably be the virus that is slowing down a lot of other things. And we can't get that in check or begin to get any certainty of that. I would include, these are things that you would normally include in a supply chain, but the other thing would be fear factor among the nations. And we have a lot of fear among the nations about various things. And this fear is hurting productivity. It is hurting industries that are needed, that are an integral part of a supply chain in their given discipline or their given manufacturing aspect of what is needed in the global supply chain. So that fear interferes with that. All of those two things obviously interfere with workers. And regardless of what anybody thinks, we still need people that are willing to work and make a living and get back to work. So we're losing that. That's not getting better, it's getting worse. Then on top of that, you got to have a willingness to spend money, companies and consumers, and that is waning dramatically. So consumer spending is slowing down, but so is business sentiment and business investment. You can't have growth. You can't have a fix to supply chain unless those things that I mentioned are foundational to the supply chain in general. So look, everything has to fall into place. You've got to have manufacturers loading containers. You got to have an ability to transport the containers to shipping ports or transfer depots of transportation on the ground, whether it be to the rail or trucks. You got to have all of that in place from the manufacturers or from the very bottom of the chain, so to speak, or maybe it's the top of the chain, but you got to have that into place. If that is in place, then you got to get the containers, whether they be moving from Colorado to North Carolina, you got to have the workforce and the chain intact in Colorado, and then again in North Carolina. Those two have to be working in unison. So you have to have the workers loading and the workers unloading. Where are they unloading to? They're unloading, excuse me, to additional rail cars and additional trucks and containers. They have to be transported. There's a cost associated with all that. And right now, fuel cost is a big a problem in association with that. Then they got to get unloaded in the stores. And then the stores have to have the workers to get what is being unloaded into the back end of the store, into the front end of the store on the shelves for consumers. Then, of course, you need consumers buying. So, look, it is a very, very tedious, long chain that any one link is going to impact it, but not any one link is responsible totally. There's a lot of links that collectively are causing the problem. Hey, remember to click the subscribe button right here on the screen. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new content is added. And more importantly than anything, you don't want to miss all 3 live hours of Financial Issues every day from 9 to noon. And you can watch it on FISM.tv. That's FISM.tv.